Hello, cloud experts. I have a question. I want to have subdomains that specify a service in some kind of container setup. So if I have service1.example.com coming from the internet into some kind of proxy, this proxy will find which service I try to talk to, and these are containers. So I want to be able to start new services and have auto discoverability, so the proxy knows when suddenly a service 3 request comes in, that it knows, oh, it's over here, I talk to it, that's fine, that's cool. So I tried to implement this in different ways. My first setup was Docker and Docker Compose. The cool thing is about Docker and Docker Compose that it's very simple. I specify a Docker container or a Docker Compose with multiple containers, and I basically created my own config file. So first issue you run into is that you need a proxy that has this discoverability. And I actually wrote my own code here. I wrote my own proxy in Go that does that for me. It works, it's fine. But issues are, if I have a regular container and I specify an exposed port, and I say this is Nginx, it has an exposed port on port 80, then this will be exposed on the whole server. So there will be some port mapping, let it be like 30,001 or something like this, where this port is mapped to, which means other services on the same server can now contact the host IP and can also talk to this. And I want to avoid this. I want not the service to not be able to talk to that exposed port. So the solution is to not expose ports, but then the proxy, of course, can't really talk to those services because there's no port exposed. But what you can do is you can create networks, and so you can place them into their own network, and now the proxy can just talk to the service, knows its IP, it even works with DNS, so that works really well. And you can then also create a network for these other containers, so this proxy can now talk to service 2 as well. And now here comes the issue. I want to be able to create new services and destroy them anytime, and this proxy is updated. So you have to do a lot of management stuff. So every time you create a new service, you need to create the service, then you need to attach the network to the proxy and the service, and you need to keep track of that name and so forth, and then, you know, enable the proxy. And when you don't want the service anymore, you take it down, you delete the network, and it works kind of fine. It actually works pretty well. The big trouble is that this only works on one server. And if I want to now add a second server, I need to have some kind of orchestration, which I currently don't have. I would have to write something maybe inside of this proxy that now talks to a different host and have some own orchestration logic where to deploy services. So this is the issue with this setup. It works pretty well, but unfortunately the orchestration is not working very well. So next one is Docker Swarm. Docker Swarm, I could create a master and multiple nodes, and Docker Swarm would automatically deploy services onto different nodes. So that is awesome. The problem is the networking again. If I have a service with an exposed port, then different services can again see each other with those exposed ports. And that is something I really don't want. I only want to be able to have the proxy basically talk to services. So, of course, in Docker Swarm, you can also create overlay networks and only include them. So basically, you can create an overlay network where only the proxy is in and the server. So now only they can talk to each other, and the other services don't see those ports. The problem is that when you have a Docker Swarm and you want to attach a network, an overlay network, then it actually recreates this proxy. So for example, if you have an Nginx here or something, it recreates this container, and this causes downtime with all the other services. Of course, I think maybe you can load balance that stuff and have multiple Nginx slowly up. I don't know. Maybe it still works, but it's really shitty. It's annoying. So this doesn't really work either for that reason. If you have a better if you know something more about it, maybe there are different network plugins, maybe with Consul or something, you can do this kind of discovery and clear access control better, then let me know, please. right now, this also doesn't seem to work. Then I tried Kubernetes, and Kubernetes might work because you can have like network policies and everything. But the problem is that it's also a bit annoying for my workflow. I would have to still write a lot of API calls because I want to be able to create services, and I want to have multiple same services, but not as replicas, not as load balanced services. I want to have them standalone services, which means I have to give them individual names, individual labels. I have to create a deployment or a pod description. I have to create a service description. I have to create an ingress router, for example, with traffic or so. And then I have to create all of that to be able to route the subdomain into the Kubernetes cluster. And then if I take that service down again, I have to undo everything again, which is again a lot of manual API calls and management that I would like to avoid. Ideally, I would just like to say, please deploy me this service under this name, and then it becomes available under a certain subdomain. So I'm unhappy with Kubernetes as well. I'm sure you can configure it, but the problem is I spent about like 20 hours now trying to learn Kubernetes and playing around with this, and it doesn't work. Or I couldn't get it to work. Maybe if you can specify, if you know some solutions that work with that well, let me know. I've read Consul and Envoy. I haven't tried myself yet if this kind of setup works. The only thing I tried was using traffic, and that was not up to my liking because I constantly had to update the ingress routes for these services, and again, a lot of manual creation and deletion of all these things. Yeah, so if you have any better solution for the setup, again, what's important to me is orchestration across different servers, so I can have a bigger cluster of something. So basically what Docker Swarm does or Kubernetes, and I want to have easily the possibility to start a single container or start a whole service with multiple containers that specify a certain port that then becomes available from the outside from a subdomain. But also, and this is the most important part and what makes it a bit difficult, is these services must not talk to each other, must not see each other. And this often happens with exposed ports on some kind of ingress network. If they both expose ports on some kind of ingress network, they can always see each other, and you can nmap each other, and I don't want that. So there needs to be some isolation. Help, really appreciate it. Thank you.